All right, here we go. More EOs. This one is the executive order that forces the Pentagon and the FAR Council to figure out how to buy things better very specifically. I feel very comfortable saying this is a once in a decade reset on how the Pentagon is going to buy things. So the last EO very specifically talked about the whole of government, right? It talked about GSA, which is its own thing. This one, 14265, Modernizing Defense Acquisition and Spurring Innovation in the Defense Industrial Base, that came out in April, is Pentagon focused. There's a FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation, and a DFAR, Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation. And this EO, 14265, is focused on the Pentagon, which is great because the DoD is the biggest buyer of all things in the United States, like literally the next closest thing, entity, organization in the world, or I guess in the country, probably in the world, that buys anything at the same rate is Walmart. The DoD has an operating budget of $1 trillion for this year, right? They buy a lot of stuff. They buy a lot of big stuff. They buy things like aircraft carriers that, last time I checked, I think the Ford class carrier, the new nuclear sub, costs like $17 billion a pop. That's great. That's why they spend so much money on things. Anybody that tells you like we're spending so much money on DoD is compared to the State Department. The State Department does not buy aircraft carriers. State Department is made up of people and like some trucks. They don't buy aircraft carriers, right? So when somebody like, we spend so much on defense and not so much on diplomacy. We spend just as much on our people in the State Department as we do on our people in the Department of Defense. It's just that the State Department doesn't buy aircraft carriers, but that's not the point. The point is EO 14265 mandates how we're going to do things more commercially and stop buying everything like an aircraft carrier. As we talked about in an earlier episode on acquisition and procurement reform, is FAR Part 12. You have to buy a commercial item if it's commercially available. You're not allowed to build it yourself. Sorry, all of my brethren and sisterin that work at the Navy labs, Air Force labs, Army labs, FFRDCs, UARCs. You are great people and you are doing great shit. Look, I need people in R&D world, in S&T world to do Manhattan Project shit, right? Like whatever the next nuclear bomb is, that's what I need you doing, right? Teleporters. Work on teleporters, right? Work on 500 kilowatt high power lasers to shoot drones out of the sky that have to be towed by 18 wheelers. Sure, great. But please, for the love of God, get out of the way of our nation's inventors, innovators, entrepreneurs, because there is so much stuff coming to market that is so good that you have no business dinking around in. So, buy commercial. Got it. FAR modernization push. Got it. 180 days. Got to go in and do that. More pilot programs for rapid acquisition. We've seen organizations like the Defense Innovation Unit use CSOs and OTAs. We've seen new funding tools come out of places like AFWorks with TACFI and StratFi, where you're allowed to do partnering deals to bring more money to the table to include private capital from, your investors. Awesome. Love that. We want more of those, and we want them to be commercial and not have unnecessary testing and evaluation and unnecessary milestone decisions, because at the end of the day, there are far too many people in the Department of Defense that can say no and kill something or slow it down than can say yes. We need the yes people to be making most of the decisions. And then it goes into the industrial base and requires an evaluation of supply chain in places where we know that we're vulnerable, right? And we've seen this over the last couple administrations. The Chips and Science Act really started looking at the chip and the semiconductor base. We've seen a lot of work done in rare earth and critical minerals and natural resources that are required to make all these things. So there's movement here to support that, to find vulnerabilities, find fragility in the system and fix that, as well as the Defense Acquisition University and workforce reform. Right now, the Department of Defense is critically short on people in the acquisition professions. Now, before I lean into that too much, there obviously has to be an overhaul in what the Defense Acquisition University teaches, because it is also in large part from the antiquated buy everything like an aircraft carrier school of thought, but it's getting better, and this continues to reform and modernize the curriculum that's taught to our acquisition professionals so they get better at using the commercially available tools that they have. And they have to implement all of these updates to the Defense Acquisition University by fiscal year 2027. So if you're already doing business with the DoD, I hear this all the time. People are like, my contracting officer, my PM, my whoever has said, I will never do X, fill in the blank, OT, SBIR, proc for experimentation. And it usually follows with a statement, something to the effect of, because I don't want to go to jail. One, unless you're Fat Leonard, nobody's going to jail for acquisition faux pas. It's bad for your career. Yeah, sure, I got that, but you're not going to jail. This will re-educate, I don't like using that word, but this will educate the acquisition community on how to buy things using these new tools. And then ultimately, once it is taught and it becomes curriculum and then ultimately acquisition kind of doctrine, it won't be acceptable to do the old way. Right now, the old way is the way. There are folks in the department, and there's lots of them that are leaning into these tools, but then there are others that are going, well, I'm not doing anything till I get told to. Well, this is going to tell them to use these new tools, which is going to be great for everybody. All right, why it matters. Less paperwork, faster awards, more pilots. One of the best things that's going to come out of this is other transaction authorities, right? So OTAs is just the stupidest word ever. They should be transaction authorities. The other should be how we build an aircraft carrier. Finally, we're reversing these, and these contract tools that say we don't need years and years and years of paperwork and these onerous, like, tell me how you did everything to build this is going to go away. When you go to the store and you buy an iPhone, you don't negotiate with the dude at the desk over how much he paid for the aluminum casing. You just buy the thing at a reasonable price, or you don't. But there's not this big discussion. It's about the deliverable. It's about the capability. It's about the thing that you're getting. You have to assess the thing that you're getting and how you're going to apply it as the total value, rather than nitpicking how they got to the product. And we're going to see a lot of changes, hopefully, that get rid of all of that. Commercial first mandates, we've got that. Different pathways and different programs to speed things up. And then obviously getting after the industrial base issues. If you have them, you're going to be questioned about them. I don't know anyone at this point who can make a drone without some kind of Chinese parts. If I'm wrong, please someone tell me. I get it that there are people who are NDAA compliant. I don't think that means sans all Chinese or foreign materials. And drones are less of the problem. Shout out to the team over at Govini. They make some terrifying graphics that show you that in major defense acquisition programs, to include submarines, there are hundreds of Chinese parts in there, right? Really getting after the vulnerabilities in those supply chains, far more important than drones. Just like everything else, there's deadlines. They're going to take time. They're probably going to ask for extensions and waivers because that's just what people do. It's going to take some time where these start really affecting you and the buying process. So you have to track them. That's going to be the theme throughout all of this, right? You have to be an educated customer. You have to be the government's your customer. You have to be an educated seller. You have to be an educated provider. You have to be an educated contractor that understands when these regulations are coming into play, how to lean into them, how to sometimes, and I know this sounds insane, especially for somebody who's like just getting into defense. Sometimes you have to educate the government folks on these new tools and help them get to yes. So you need to be educated. It's going to take time. You have to track them. You have to know them. Stay compliant. Some PMs will resist. And it's not just PMs. I use that term broadly. PMs, PEOs, APMs, DPMs, TPOCs, contractors, seated contractors. People will resist this for lots of reasons. One, because they're happy with the thing that they're buying now, not because maybe it's the best technology, but it's there and it's easy and they don't want to change. Sometimes they like the thing that they helped build and they don't want to buy something new from your cool guy, whiz bang, fancy hair and cool bubble vest Silicon Valley company. I don't know. There's lots of hesitation, which goes back to you need to know the regulation. You need to be able to cite them, and you should basically have a list of references that says, I am this, I am compliant. You can't tell me no for reasons of X because this is the new way of doing things. A lot of education needs to go on with the people who want to do business with defense. You need to know and cite and support your company and the fact that you are compliant, you are doing business in accordance with the new way of doing things, and question people who seem like they're using antiquated methods. And then at the end of the day, these are executive orders. Nothing is guaranteed out of this. Nobody's guaranteed to get any kind of contracts. It's not like, oh, look, I checked all these boxes. Now you need to pay me. This is going to go through rulemaking, through the FAR. It's going to go down to DOD, and you're still going to have to compete for contracts. You just have a differentiator now if you're in line and compliant to all of these things, if your competitors are not. All right. So again, and as always, so what? Great. Things are happening. Now I know that things are happening. What the hell do I do with that? This week, just like the last set of recommendations, first and foremost, understand these. Download them. We're going to link them below. Download them, read them, understand them, highlight them, and start citing them. Label your product as FAR Part 12 compliant. I know it's nerdy. I know you're not going to put that on your pitch deck to your next investor who wants, your shit to look like Top Gun 3 and super cool, and we're going to save the world Iron Man shit, and putting FAR Part 12 compliant on there seems nerdy. Well, guess what? Do your funding thing, but then when you start talking to the government, speak their language, right? Don't go in there with your cool guy buzzwords. Speak government language. If you lead with we are FAR Part 12 compliant, you're going to get a lot further when this becomes the new law of the land. Know the EO. All the EOs that we're talking about should be on hand at all times so that when somebody tells you that they can't do something or you can't do something, you can just ask that question. Well, I read in this EO that and then they're gonna be like, oh shit, this guy knows what he's talking about. All right. Lean into pilot programs and anybody that's already kind of doing this stuff. If you're dealing with like big Army or big Navy and it seems like a pain in the ass, it's not going to be any less pain in the ass immediately. If you're already dealing with an AFWorks, a SoftWorks, a DIU, even the folks at R&E, I know R&E, the Undersecretary for Research and Engineering, sounds like a place where traditional R&E kind of activities would happen. But all the folks over in Mission Capabilities, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Mission Capabilities that are running the T-Rex program, that are running the Raptor program, they have the APFIT program. Like this is very forward-leaning, warfighter focused, fast ways to do business. These are the organizations that if they're already on your radar and you're kind of figuring out where do we hit the gas a little bit more on one customer over the other, it's these guys, because they've already been trying to do this for a decade. They've been fighting the good fight, right? These organizations, the DIUs, the AFWorks, the R&E folks, they've been trying to do this against the mountain of bullshit that we've all been dealing with. So now once this breaks free, their workforce already knows how to do this. Their leaders are already very comfortable signing off on these. In the near term, lean into the organizations that this is already their way of doing business, because it's just going to get better and it's just going to get faster. Make sure your companies tie themselves to high-level strategic guidance in all ways, shape, and form, not just EOs. The Department of Defense, out of the Undersecretary for R&E, has a list of critical technology areas. Align yourself to them and make sure that somewhere at the top of the page, you cite the critical technology area of which you are aligned. We're going to talk about in the future EOs on Golden Dome, EOs on AI. These are all things that you should be referencing back to critical technology areas. AI called out explicitly, or even if it's in counter UAS, it's sensing, right? Counter UAS is sensors and effectors. So you're in there. Cite your critical technology area. Cite your alignment to, the DoD's number one priority of not having to fight a war and deterring the Chinese Communist Party in the Indo-Pacific. Align to that. Tell them that you're FAR Part 12 compliant right up front. Show them that you're commercially available. Prep your workforce, so whoever is your BD team, your congressional team, your contracting acquisition, whoever's writing your stuff, make sure they all know this stuff, right? Because the buyers on the DoD side, the contracting officers and the acquisition team, they're going to get better at this, and your team needs to be ready too. Once this takes place, outside of any resistance, this is the thing that they'll be looking for. I don't know who out there in viewers, companies, investors have ever been on the other side of the table. But if you've ever had to participate in a source selection, you're dealing with hundreds of proposals. You have tight windows to award, and the folks on that source selection are going to be trained to look for a few things. Lead with all of the answers. Answer the solicitation directly with all of the answers to the questions you know they're going to ask. If you can satisfy everything they need to know in the first paragraph or two, you might just get moved into the yes pile a lot quicker than if you bury all that shit at the end. Everybody's eyes start glazing over and they're not sure what's going on, and you get put in the no pile, right? If you have to go through hundreds of these things, at some point, they're going to be looking for keywords. They're going to be looking for these checks in the box. Just lead with that shit. It's going to make your proposals stand out that much better. So that's EOs, acquisition, procurement, FAR, pathways. More to come. Learn more, know more, sell more.